Would you like?
Hi, I'm Elaine Brewster. Welcome to Aspects of Energy, a forum where we talk about ways to raise your energy. And this is Mother's Day. Somebody gave me a wonderful Mother's Day bouquet. And so I hope it's a lovely weekend for everyone. And after this session, you will be so glad because mothers kind of get stressed out. And after this session, we're going to learn how to de stress using the Alexander method of relaxation. Now, this is a very, very specialized method, and our guest, Julia Caulder, can tell us more about it. It's one that I've used for umpteen years. And in my book, Scott's Choice, on page 244, there is a method for relaxation. I think all methods are a little bit similar, so I combined about three methods together. But Julia is going to guide us into Alexander. So, Julia, would you tell us who Matthias Alexander was and why he came up with this, and then how you came into it? Julia is a singer and a performer, a certified technician. She works and teaches in Park City and LA. And and I have to say that when people really do the Alexander method, do meaning to teach it and to work with people, they're manipulating a little bit and they have to be certified. So when I do it with my singing students, I do it in a very gentle way. I am not certified, but Julia is. So fire away, Julia.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited to be here. Um, well, let's see. I can just tell you a little bit for starters about what the Alexander technique is and why it might be something that you would be interested in for yourself. Um, it is a technique that helps us learn to pay attention to how we do what we do. Because a lot of times as we go through our daily activities, we are really overdoing and we're tightening our neck and compressing our shoulders and doing way more work to do our simple everyday tasks
Mhm.
than we really need to be doing. So the Alexander technique is a really great tool because it helps us to become more aware of the habits that we have, and we can teach ourselves to unwind and to release excess tension through just becoming more familiar with how we're doing what we're doing. And today we'll talk a little bit about that, and I'll give us some things that we can think about and some practical applications. Um, but I just was wondering, for those of you out there, if you feel sometimes like your job causes you stress, if you feel at the end of the day like you're pretty mentally and physically tired. um, because most of us do. And a lot of times that's just because of the way we're moving through our day. And we may be really overusing ourselves. So I came to the technique. I was a professional opera singer before, and I sang with various like LA Opera and Orange County Opera Pacific. And the notes that I would get all the time were about how I needed to stand taller and I needed to find ways to be more relaxed on stage and everything. And so that was what got me started on lessons. But I found it to be so helpful because I think this is true for all of us in the work that we do. Sometimes you really only have a couple of minutes when you are in front of people presenting something, and you only have that like 1 or 2 minutes to make an impression. And when I was singing, I remember one time I had this audition at Carnegie Hall that was a really big deal. And I had flown from Los Angeles to New York for the first time. And I was so nervous. And I got there, and there was like this line of people sitting there just looking at me writing notes. And so I had to walk by them, and I walked over to the piano, and my teacher had told me to let the pianist know how fast I wanted the piece to go. And so I said, oh, and here's the tempo. And I kind of gave him the tempo. And he looked at me and he said, there's only one tempo for this piece. Just sing it like that. And I think without my Alexander work, I would have just like crumpled to the ground and not been able to continue. But because I had my Alexander studies, which have helped me really learn to kind of calm myself and focus. And anyway, I ended up singing well. I didn't get the audition, but it's like a really great tool for us to have for many reasons. But a lot of times, if we only have a couple minutes to make an impression, it can help us to focus ourselves and calm ourselves. So that was how I came to the technique, but I've found it really helpful. I always had chronic back pain, and now I don't have back pain at all. And I've been teaching for about 20 years. And so I've worked with a lot of people with various kinds of pain that has improved greatly through just, taking some lessons and learning how to pay attention to their habits of how they're doing what they're doing. Because even just here, as we're all sitting here, I'm going to ask everybody to do something simple. So everybody go ahead and just cross your fingers together. Okay, good. Now you're just going to cross them the other way. Okay. So does that feel a little strange?
Yeah.
The second way? Yeah. Yeah. And it's really, and then we can uncross. It's really the same thing. It's just that our habit is to do it like this. So a lot of times we just get into habits of doing things and we're not even aware of how we're doing what we're doing. So yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Mathias Alexander.
Oh, okay. He was an actor and he was born in 1869 and he kept losing his voice all the time. So he would get up on stage to speak and lose his voice. And so he did what we would all do. He went to the doctor and the doctor told him to just rest his voice and before he went on stage, not to talk for a couple of weeks. And so he would do that. But then he would get up on stage and he would lose his voice again. And so he did something which was pretty special that I think a lot of us might not think to do. Instead of just moving forward, he decided to stop and observe. And he said, well, what am I doing when I'm speaking that's causing me to lose my voice? What's happening? And so he set up all these mirrors around himself. And for 9 years, he observed how he was speaking. And over time, he figured out that he had some unconscious habits of tension. So even as we're all sitting here, if we were to say, I'm just going to have everybody do what I do. Okay, we're going to say, to be or not to be.
Okay, we're all going to say it?
Yeah, everybody say it.
1, 2, 3. To be or not to be.
Yes. And he noticed that when he did that, he was tightening his neck and compressing his head. So he was kind of going, to be or not to be. But he didn't even know he was doing that. And so as he started paying attention to himself, he learned that he did that all the time. He just did it much more pronounced when he got up on stage. And so he figured out how to take away the excess work that he was doing. And then his vocal trouble went away. And he was able to be in plays and recite perfectly. So we just want to really start looking at how we do what we do, because a lot of times we don't think about that. We really don't. And so I have a little friend here that I'm going to get. Let me just grab it here. Okay. So this is my skeleton. And we don't really think about the fact that our head weighs as much as a bowling ball. it weighs 8 to 12 pounds. So if my head is coming forward, if I'm bringing my head forward, then what happens to everything else? I know you can't answer me, but I'll give you the answer, right? If our head is forward, it brings everything else forward too. And then things get a little bit compressed. So we want to start paying attention to like, well, what's happening with my head? What am I doing with it? Where is it?
That makes perfect sense because I have a balance issue.
Uh-huh.
And I noticed from my profile, my head is this way, right?
Uh-huh.
So that may have, as you mentioned, that may have something to do with my balance issue, whether my head is jutted forward.
Yeah, I think it probably would.
So you have a technique that would help me with that?
Oh yeah. It helps you to learn to think and pay attention. So in an Alexander lesson, we work with everyday movements, like it's hands-on. So I guide people through sitting and standing and bending, walking. If people are singers, I work with them while they sing. People who are in sports, I work with them running, like whatever you do. And then we start to pay attention to what your patterns are, because if your head is forward, then that probably means that as you're moving through space, you're bringing your head forward.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think the old way our grandma would have told us to do it, she would have said like, just sit up straight, put your head back, right? But we all know that that doesn't work. If we try to do that, we just get tired and we're holding a position, right? So instead, we want to learn to pay attention to how we move. Because if my head is forward, it's because all day long when I'm standing up and sitting down, I'm bringing my head forward and compressing to move. So it's really, the Alexander work is a process of taking away excess tension. Does that make sense? A little bit of sense? It's a hard thing to discuss on a podcast in a way, because I feel like I need to get my hands on you guys and work with you.
The question I'm going to ask is, I'm in Canada, you're in.
Yeah.
So do you Zoom stuff? Like, can you Zoom walk through a program for me?
Well, it's really best taught with hands-on. So like if there wasn't a teacher near you, then I'm sure we could figure something out.
Okay.
But my website is alexandertechniqueparkcity.com. But the main website is amsatonline.com. It's amsatonline.com. And that would be a place that would have listings of teachers all over the place. Or you could go to stat.com since you're in Canada.
Can you put that in the chat, Julia?
Sure. How do I do that?
Go down to the bottom where it says chat and just select chat.
Okay.
And then a bar will come up on the side, and down at the bottom of that bar, you just type.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so I'll put.
While you type, I'll tell them an experience that I had. My mother wanted me to be warm while I was at the University of Utah. And she selected for me this heavy, heavy wool winter coat, long wool winter coat. It was so heavy that when boys would come to pick me up for a date, they would very politely, to put my coat on, they would take it off the rack. And when it went off the rack, their hands would go down. It was so heavy, it surprised them, and then they would put it on and I would go, oh my gosh, I really felt it. After I went to either my first or second Alexander lesson, it was wintertime, and I put my coat on and I literally didn't even feel that it was even on me. I couldn't feel the material. I could not feel the weight. I was like this new person. I was weightless. Alexander is amazing.
That's so great. You had such a wonderful experience.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it does make us feel a lot lighter and easier. And what we're doing as teachers, we're helping to observe what's interfering with the relationship of the head, neck, and back. And we're helping to take away the extra things in the way. But we really are working with the nervous system. So it's different from pasting things on the outside. You know what I mean? Like, we're not like, hold your shoulders here. Instead, we're observing as you're moving and helping you to learn to remove the excess work so that you can move more freely and easily.
Hmm. I'd never
And,
heard that.
balance is a big issue with when you cross 80 or whatever age you cross.
Uh-huh.
Balance is a big issue, especially for me. I'm a golfer and I can't hit the ball. I've lost probably 70, 80 yards because of my balance issue.
Uh-huh.
Well, it means big time to me and big time to my buddies who are golfers that we've lost it. We've lost our balance, so we can't take a full swing at the ball. So, boy, if you got something to fix balance, that is huge.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it'll be really helpful. And if you let me know if there are teachers in your area once you look up, and
Yeah.
then I can check them out and I can tell you who has the best training.
Okay.
Because it's a 1,600-hour training to become an Alexander teacher. So you want to make sure that if you're taking the lesson, the person is AMSAT certified. And so that's an important thing. But let's see, another thing that we could do, even just as we're sitting here, everybody, is we could not change anything, but just see what we notice as we're sitting. So you can kind of see, is my weight more on one side than the other side? Is my head tilted to one side or the other? Am I forward? Am I back? My teacher always says, where is my head? Where are my sit bones? Where are my feet? You know, kind of checking that out. And then probably what you're noticing is something that you do all the time. So if you found yourself like leaning in one direction, probably that's what you do regularly. But we don't really notice that because we're so used to our habits that they're just really a part of us. And when we start to study this work, we can kind of tease out our habits so we can begin to see them and we can start noticing how we're doing things. So another thing I thought would be fun for us to do is just a little bit of breathing. So as we're all sitting here, I'm just going to ask you to open your mouth and just let your breath out easily. And then you close your lips and you let the breath come in through your nose. And then you let the breath out. Then you close your lips, you let it come in through your nose. Then you let it out. So that's a good thing to do during the day too, is just remember to let out your breath a few times. Because since we have a lot of stress going on with our jobs and everything, a lot of times we're holding our breath a little bit. So even just remembering to let it out a few times is a good idea.
One of the things that I remember, and it's maybe slightly different, but maybe it's along the same line, was that everything in Alexander, they were never making you do anything. It was all allow.
Yeah, allow is good.
Allow your head to lift. Allow this to happen. Do they still use that?
Yeah, we say, because in the technique we call them directions, and they're thoughts that we can think that help us go in the direction that we want to go in. So we say, let my neck be free, to allow my head to go forward and up, to allow my back to lengthen and widen. And sometimes the forward and up direction is confusing at first, But if you think of the opposite, it makes sense. So if I'm tightening my neck, then can you see that my head is going back and down? Like it's kind of going that way.
Mhm.
So if I think of letting my neck be free, then it just allows my head to release forward and up, because the front of the head is heavier than the back. So when we're not tightening our neck, there's a little forward nod. So anyway, but if you were to take some lessons, like Alexander technique is something that you study. It's kind of like voice lessons or learning to speak French or piano. You don't just go to one, you go over a period of months, and your teacher helps you to discover what your habits are. And it's not just talking, it's guided hands-on. So in your lesson, you would have a different kinesthetic experience of feeling freer and more open and easier, kind of like Elaine was talking about. So even here, as we're all sitting, I could have us do one thing just to see what you notice. Okay, so I'm gonna have all of you just stand up, and if you can't, Elaine, because you're in there so tight, don't. I'm gonna have you just stand up and sit back down. Okay, so just do what would be normal. Just gonna stand up and sit back down.
Oh, I've done
Okay,
this.
good. Now I'm gonna have you do the same thing again, but just pay attention and tell me, what direction does your head go when you stand up? Does it go forward, back, up, down? You can pick two of those. Like, what does it do? Uh-huh. And so did anybody observe anything about what happens there with your head?
Yeah, mine goes forward, no question.
Okay, good to notice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Kind of leads the way.
Barbara,
Kind of
uh-huh.
like leading the way.
Yeah, totally. That's a true thing. Most of us do a little bit of that. And that is tightening in our neck before we move. So we can think before we stand up of just ease in our neck. We're going to let our neck be easy, because standing up, like if he's going to stand up, he's going to be sitting. Okay. Boop. Then I'm going to have him stand up. Where does most of the movement happen for standing up and sitting down?
The thighs.
Hips, the hips.
Yeah, exactly. The hips, right? So a lot of times we do other stuff to stand up and sit down, like we tighten here and bring our head forward. But the forward happens from the hips when we stand up. So this time you're going to stand up. You're just going to put a hand behind your head, like on your neck. Good. And then before you stand up, think of just letting your neck muscles be easy. So you're not going to tighten there before you move. Okay, good. And then you're just going to go ahead and stand up. There you go. Nice. And then you're going to sit back down again. Yeah. Good. But that tightening of our neck is something that we do when we do almost everything. Like even if we reach for something in the fridge, we're probably doing that. If we're talking on our phone, we're probably doing that. But if we can learn to release the neck a little bit, then it just allows everything to work better, because then the back can lengthen underneath.
I noticed that my the front, my whatever you call the front, the core, worked much harder than it did when I before I held the neck. When I held the neck, the core was really engaged.
Interesting. Yeah. So the work was kind of being redistributed more where it should go. Yeah. Than your neck, because your neck doesn't really need to be doing all that stuff.
No.
Yeah.
So I also feel it when I sit down. I feel my neck like maybe pushing forward.
good observation.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we can think about that too. Before we sit, we can think of just stopping and letting our neck be free, and then we sit. But this kind of work does take time, and it's really good to find a teacher in your area, because then we can work with you and we put our hands on you and kind of guide you here and there. And so it makes it a lot easier. But it is good just to start paying attention and noticing how we do what we do.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Um,
You guys are so wonderful. You have such a good group.
oh, they're amazing. Well, they want to learn. All these people are very open and want to learn.
Yeah.
Are there any medical studies that have been done on Alexander?
Yeah. There was one in the British Medical Journal
Mm.
about 10 years ago that showed Alexander technique to be better for back pain than massage or exercise.
Wow.
Mhm.
Why do so many people who are in symphonies, and people like you say, runners, why do people that are actually in the midst of doing an activity, why do they choose Alexander?
Well, I think because with musicians and actors, it's offered as a class when we're in college.
Mm.
So if you go to, Juilliard or even UCLA or any big school, you take Alexander technique because it helps you a lot with your stage presence and your breathing and your vocal production.
Mm.
But so yeah, so a lot of musicians know about it. If you go to a symphony, most of those players will have heard of it. Um, and then it can improve our form a lot. So if you're an athlete and if you've got like a pile of boxes, like if you think of your spine as a pile of boxes, and if they're kind of askew and one's here and one's there and they're all over the place, then they're much harder to carry around. But if we learn how to like release and line the boxes up, then it just makes it easier. So it can improve form. And I actually work with a lot of golfers because it can really help with your golf swing, because you learn how to lengthen your back and how to rotate around as you're hitting the ball, so you're not compressing in.
Mhm.
But I love the technique because it's really for us and it just helps us feel better. And it's not about trying to hold a position. It's more about learning to pay attention.
Mm.
And then that awareness can help us to take away some of the extra things that we're doing, because there's the postural reflex under there. And so if we stop doing all the extra work, the postural reflex will start to work better, if that makes sense. So we just want to like get out of the way a little bit and stop doing all the extra stuff. Like if we look at toddlers, they just move perfectly. And when they go to pick something up, you can picture like a toddler picking up a toy.
Mhm.
They really just bend at the hips and knees and they have their nice long back and they pick up the toy instead of like what most of us would do, which is like compress.
They do. Sandra, you got a thought.
I do. Please make comments on these 2 points I'm going to bring up.
Okay.
I enjoy walking, and
Uh-huh.
I was talking to someone who was telling me, just make sure you breathe correctly. I said, okay, what's that? He said, you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. So I have to concentrate to do that because that's not typical for me.
Yeah.
That's one thing. The second thing is I'm sometimes in bed at night and I say, okay, I didn't think about breathing today. Let me do it now. You can't go to sleep breathing correctly. I was not able to go to sleep breathing correctly. I said, forget it. I need to go to sleep. And I did whatever I did and went to sleep.
Well, I think that with our breathing, it kind of works well on its own. So if there's anything we're going to do, we can just think of exhaling sometimes, because then that helps the reflex to work better. So I don't know. I'm an exerciser too, and I like to walk a lot too. And I find that if I'm thinking too hard about I'm supposed to inhale now and I'm supposed to exhale now, it can kind of trip me up a little bit, almost like a caterpillar. If you ask him how many legs he has, then he's like, oh God, I don't know, I can't walk any, you know. So, but I think just remembering like that we can let our breath out, because our habit usually is to hold it a little bit, you know. So just thinking as you're walking, like, I'm gonna just let my breath out, and then the new one will come in, and then I'm gonna let it out.
It's told to breathe in through my nose, hold it, and then exhale through my mouth.
Yeah, I think that that's a lot. Like, I don't think, I mean, just my Alexander opinion would be that that might create some tension, you know?
That's why I've noticed by the time I'm nearing home, breathing has gone out the window and I'm just moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's a really good thing, you know, and you could even, when you're walking, just decide that you're going to pay attention to your breathing. You're not going to try to change it or do anything to it, but you can just go, like what's happening as I'm walking? What do I notice? I do that with my students a lot, with just noticing if there's movement here, if there's movement here, if there's movement here. And not that it should be anywhere, but more just like, well, let's pay attention. What's happening? What's going on there? Because really beginning with paying attention to what we're doing is what we want. That's like the starting point.
Okay.
I'm going to put a book in the chat here, you guys. It's a good introductory book. It's called Body Learning by Michael Gelb. Just in case anybody wants to get a book.
Yeah,
but it's definitely something that you should take lessons in if you're interested.
Bill, do you have a thought?
Yes, I don't have a thought, but I have some comments and maybe I could get a little bit feedback. I'm a pretty avid golfer, pretty good player.
Awesome.
Whatever I'm doing, and you say that you work with a lot of golfers, but whatever I'm doing, whether I'm standing, whether I'm walking, whether I'm briskly walking or sitting or in playing golf, I'm always thinking of posture and process. Well, when we're walking, if you don't, you have to think of process a little bit too, have a little bit better posture. But when you're working with your golfers, what is some of the key things? Is it posture? Is it now? Again, if I could just say something to you, I use what is called a one plane swing, which is a little bit more bent over, versus a two plane swing, which you're going more around your spine, which you're more standing up. So it's something for you to little feed for thought when you're working with your golfers. But I'm just wondering, what are some of your key elements that you might direct them to?
Well, I help them to learn to pay attention to what they're doing. So better posture is a result of the Alexander technique, but I don't tell them like, stand like this, put your shoulders here, hold this. Instead, I watch them and then I put my hands on to guide them. And a lot of what I've noticed with the golfers that I work with is that some people have a tendency when they lean forward to compress. So I work with them on freeing their neck and lengthening their back so that when they bend forward, they're bending at the hips. And then with their swing, I work with them on, because like a lot of times when we do something simple that involves rotation, like all of us, just as you're sitting there, you can just, for me right now, you're just going to look to the right. And then you're going to look to the left. And a lot of times when we do that, we compress the neck to look. So instead of just letting the head rotate from in between the ears, which is what is meant to happen, we kind of do that. And so a lot of the golfers that I work with, I find that when they rotate, their habit is to compress in as they move their arms. And so I try to help them to lengthen their back and fold at the hips. And then really like as they're spiraling around, it's a lengthening instead of a You know, because I think when you're hitting the ball, it's easy to come in and down, but instead we want to think of going up and out.
Yeah, I know, I understand. You're exactly right. Because a lot of people might have a curved back versus a
Uh-huh.
straight back.
Uh-huh.
And there's the pressure points up here in the neck, which you talk about, but also the lower spine. And I like to release the lower spine and make
Yeah.
it relaxed so that we can rotate more around it.
Yeah,
But,
that's great.
but for me to think more about my neck too, and I know what you're saying as far as moving into the backswing of tensing up, and that involves the
Mhm.
neck and tensing it puts you out of sync.
Right.
I have something that I call keeping my levels. That means of hip, chest,
Mhm.
whatever. And that's part of it. If you are tensing, you could lose those levels.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's
That
rather
makes sense.
interesting because I have a process, but when you think about actually doing a movement, and it's for Bruce as well, who loses his balance, it's thinking of your process and working out in a practice swing. But as if you watch any kind of golf or listen to some of the better analysts, announcers, whatever on a broadcast, it's to the target, and you don't want to involve all those things. And so it's a matter of body memory.
Mhm.
Memory
Yeah.
part. But I'm hoping to take a little bit away from here on this and put it into my own physical movement
Uh-huh.
when I
Cool.
do play.
That's great.
So
And you know, one interesting little thing, you guys, that we could all do. Okay. So everybody, as you're sitting there, just okay, first I want you to just move your head like this. Just up and down, kind of like you're saying yes, right? Okay. Then I want you to tighten your big left toe. Like just grip your left toe. And then you're going to move your head the same way.
Mm.
And can you notice that when you tighten your toe, it's harder to move your head?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So we tend to, whenever we tighten anything, it causes us to tighten our neck. So when we learn to free our neck, it's very helpful because we tighten it so much all the time.
could I add to that?
Yeah.
I notice in my golf game
Hmm.
that in the swing, I wear out my socks in my left shoe a lot more than I do my right.
Interesting.
It's my front foot, and I wear out the top of my shoe that because you're firming and
Yep.
you're causing more stress. So if I'm causing more stress there, I must be causing more stress up here.
That's a really great observation. Yes.
And I have to switch my left socks to my right foot because I've created holes in them. That way I get to wear my left sock.
They need to sell
Now
just
I have to buy some left socks.
Yeah. Oh.
What's fascinating is to walk with laces and look down at your laces, and they don't act the same way on each foot. We're not as symmetrical as we think we are.
We're
You're
not.
right.
One lace may constantly like go over to the left, and the other lace like goes in the middle or something. It's interesting.
Totally. Yeah. Well, we're pretty dominant on one side usually.
Mhm.
So,
Well, one time, clear back at the university days when we were wearing long necklaces, a girlfriend and I both had each had a long necklace, and we were walking next to each other. And she's a water skier. She was a skier. I didn't do things like that that required that central core as much.
mhm.
And I noticed that as we were walking, my necklace was going boom, 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 side to side.
Uh-huh.
Her necklace was going bong, bong. It was staying right in the front.
Wow. Uh-huh.
Thought, we are using our bodies differently.
That's such a good observation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
crazy.
really cool.
Well, I told Dee that we would not go on forever. So
Oh,
we
yes.
thank you. And
Can
before
I ask
we
just
do-
one more question, please?
Sure.
I'll make it short and quick. I have a dear, dear friend who has a left hip discomfort.
Uh-huh.
And when he sits at the computer, he sits and the weight is on the right side and he's using his right hand on the computer. And so
Uh-huh.
his left side is never down equally as his right side.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
he causing damage?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's a really good observation, and I think Alexander lessons would help him to learn to think as he's sitting, so that he can notice that habit of compressing down on the one side, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much. My website is alexandertechniqueparkcity.com, and I really enjoyed all of you. And thank you so much for having me.
as we're leaving, Julia, can you once more tell us to let the neck go free
Oh,
and tell
sure.
that to us again? The
Sure.
Alexander mantra, I call it.
Yeah. So you're just going to think of allowing your neck to be free, to allow your head to go forward and up, to allow your back to lengthen and widen.
Wow. Wow. That's good stuff. I have to tell you, in leaving, the man who taught us was a pianist and an organist. And
Mhm.
he did this right in front of my very eyes. He had a piano and he, with lots of tension, lots of energy, he played a big chord and it was big. And then he did what she just said, allow your neck to go and let your back widen. And so he did, and you could see him, he physically adjusted himself. And then he lifted up his hands as if they were feathers, and he feathered them down and made a sound that was 3 times as loud as what he did
Yes.
before.
Oh, that's so good.
All that energy somehow just was allowed to
Mhm.
come through his body into his hands. It was one of the most incredible things I've ever heard.
Wow.
From Relaxation.
Yes.
Wow.
Imagine.
Thank
You can do this. Thank you, Julia.
you all so much. I really enjoyed it.
Very fun. All right. Have a great week. And remember, and be like Julia and smile at everyone, because it's going to raise their energy and it will certainly raise yours.
Thank you.
you.